Welcome back to another episode of A Record of My Father. Today is our first interview with FJ Mcmahon. How are you doing there?
I'm doing good.
Glad to hear
Yeah,
from
we
you.
didn't know who you were talking to. You got to point. If you point, then we would know.
FJ
A pleasure to
McMahon.
meet you. A pleasure to meet you, FJ. Or is it
Oh,
Fred?
pleasure.
Excuse me?
My pleasure.
Okay, your pleasure. Oh my gosh. I'm sitting here and I'm like, when he brought up your name, I had no idea who you were. I'd never heard of you. I've never seen your music. And then all of a sudden I started like going on and listening to the songs and just like the spirit of the golden juice and just like started to
Ah,
learn about you. I've learned a little bit about your history, learned about that, and then I ask him like, so what in the hell? I mean, how did you decide on this person? And you can elaborate, Mr. Zach.
Yeah, I've been a long time fan, and it was funny. One day I got a Spotify recommended because been a avid fan of Robert Lester Folsom, Towns Van Zandt, and Bert Jantz, and Mr. FJ here falls right in line with that category. So that's why I just came up on my Spotify. And so I just wanted to get to asking, how did you come up with the idea for the Spirit of the Golden Juice and maybe where the songwriting components came from?
well, I didn't have an idea for Spirit of the Golden Juice per se to begin with. Uh, but in 1969, I just started writing songs. And I was back in Vietnam and I was kind of staying by myself and just writing songs for the better part of 6, 7 months, something like that. And I met these two guys and I was playing in a coffee house. And I met these two guys, and they said, "Hey, we really like your stuff. How'd you like to make an album?" So I said, "Great, sounds great. I mean, why not?" And so they got together with Accent Records in Hollywood, and the album deal kind of started to come to pass. And I started getting the songs together enough to go on the album.
It's a wonderful story. What coffee house specifically? Was that in Santa Barbara, California by chance?
Yeah, it was in Santa Barbara, and there was like oh God, the IPAN, the Nexus, I think, was where I was most of the time.
So what makes you want to write a song? I mean, can you think back? I mean, have you written a song recently? I guess is a question.
Every once in a while, I sit down and write a little something, and if I get an idea and touches off a little button in my head, and I'll sit down and maybe tinker around with a few chords. I haven't been on a big songwriting binge in a long, long
Hmm.
time.
So why a
It's just
song? And oh, sorry.
pardon.
I was going to say why a song, and I mean, I I've always like started to write. I've always wanted to be a writer. I've never succeeded at it. I started writing a book. I had an idea and I kind of put it together. I started writing another book. I wrote out all the chapters and all that kind of stuff like that. And I get the idea and I go to the motivation. And then I've written a poem or two that I liked. But then the idea to put music in with the words to me just seems like just people from another world. And, and the idea that you could play an instrument with your hands and sing at the same time, you know, I'm having trouble with the talking and breathing. So for me to add those multiple layers of things, and it's just thinking about it to me, and just I guess it's just, is it a mindset or that comes in that just says this would make me feel
Actually,
better?
I kind of had it laid out for me in my senior year in high school, and I had this English class. And I had this great, great English teacher who was a fighter pilot in World War II,
Oh
and he was,
wow.
he was just a guy. And he'd give us writing assignments, and my writing assignments would always miss the mark. And one time he called me in after school and said, "Look, we're not making a good thing here. I give you a writing assignment that should be anywhere from 3 to 5 pages, and you knock it out in 3 to 5 paragraphs. And I said, oh, well, it's done. But if you look at it, it's done. I mean, the idea is there. He said, you know what? You're not a writer. You should be a poet or a songwriter.
Uh-huh.
I said, oh, that works. Okay. And it did. And then that's right around the time when I started. By the time I was a senior in high school, I'd been a working musician for 4 years.
Yeah.
And I've been playing top 40 stuff and surf music, and I was kind of bored and burnt out by it because I was playing like at least 1 or 2 nights a week, and that was my job in high school.
So you started like when you were what, 13, 14?
You know, you can only play 3 chords for so long. And then that was right at the time when coming out, Bob Dylan was coming out, you know, Judy and Joni and all of them. And I started listening to what they were saying and what they were singing. I said, ooh, I like that. I like that a lot, man. You're telling a story, and it's, you know, you're throwing some chords in, and it works out really cool. So I love that.
So you started what, when you were like 13, 14? You're playing publicly?
Yeah.
And, well, yeah. I mean, you just walk into knock on the door and say, hey, I want to play, and they'll let you go stand in the front and come here 7 o'clock Friday night or Wednesday night and just start playing.
Well, what happened was when I first started playing, I was around 13 years old, started playing guitar and learned to start playing the early, you know, surf music and rock and roll music of the day. Mm-hmm. And then we got a band of about 4 guys. And and my mom, who was really cool lady and kind of tough as nails, managed it. And she would get gigs, and she'd be on the phone during the week and set us up for a gig or 2 on the weekend, a paying gig.
Oh wow,
oh, that's fantastic.
So what'd she charge you? Did she take 85%? Because that's what managers usually take, right?
And so what? I was there again.
I was going to say, so how much did she charge you? Did she take 85%? Because isn't that what they take?
Oh, charge us? Nothing. She was very cool about that.
Wow.
Very, very cool. And usually we'd make somewhere between $50 and $100 a gig, which for the early 60s was very good bucks.
Great cash. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
There's still people even now trying to find gigs that aren't just free.
Yeah.
It's a hard.
You can play in front of the Starbucks if you want. We'll give you free coffee.
Exactly.
Oh, exactly. If that, you pay for the table or something. Yeah. No, and we got nailed by the musicians union after the first year, and they made us join. So that cut it down a little bit.
Did it help? I mean, did being in a union help then?
Help them. We had to pay our dues.
Yeah, you pay your dues, but was there like, you know, did they introduce you to people? Did you meet people? Did it expand it at all? Was it?
Absolutely not. Because back in those days, everybody in the musicians union was like 40 and above, and they had no clue as to the music we're playing.
Okay.
And it didn't dawn on them as to the places we were playing. You know, it just 2 different worlds.
Wow. So
how long did you
meets? Yeah, go ahead.
So how long did you end up playing in these surf bands? Because I have it here. It was the Cordells, the Golden Guitars, and the Checkmates. So I'm just wondering how long of a period of time these 3 bands lasted in your life.
About 4 years.
4 years. Okay, so the entirety of high school. Okay.
Yeah, because what happened is the Cordells lasted about 2.5 years or something like that. And then one of the guys broke off and did another band, and so we got a new guy, and then we went to work for a place called the Golden Guitar, and we had to change our name to the Golden Guitars. It was great. It was a teenage nightclub, but it folded pretty quick because Santa Barbara's too small a town to support it constantly. And then after that, we got the name the Checkmates, you know, so it was just ours, and then we finished up with that.
So who did you meet? Like insane, I guess it's kind of weird question to ask, but were there famous people that played in any of the venues around there that you rubbed elbows with, or was it just you're climbing the ladder right now?
Actually, and at this point, we're kind of climbing the ladder and just working normally. This is during high school. The famous people on occasion would happen when we would play gigs down in Oxnard and Ventura, and they would sign some guy to come down and play uh, the famous bands of the day, the Pendletons and Ray Peterson and a few guys like that.
Yeah.
That was kind of fun.
Yeah, it's just a hair before my time. I remember my brother used to listen to them. And in 60, was it 64, 65 when the Stones came out with the one album? And then that sort of was the beginning, or the Beatles was. I mean, it all depends upon how you look at it at that time when you think about the growth of music.
Well, yeah. Well, once the Beatles came out, it was all over. I mean, all you were doing was learning Invasion songs then.
Yeah.
That was it.
Wow.
I think we
So
briefly touched on this as well, but folk music. Is that how you would define yourself as a musician?
Now,
I think then with the spirit of the golden juice.
uh, then I would define myself as just a guitar player.
Just a guitar player. Gotcha.
mhm.
Yep. I didn't get to be. I didn't start actually writing and singing and doing anything like that until 1969.
Mhm.
So,
After I got back to Nam.
so would you say Vietnam had an influence on your album?
My God, yes, absolutely. There is there's pre Air Force and post Air Force, and it's just worlds. You know, pre Air Force was all Leave It to Beaverland and Disneyland, and post Air Force was like, where am I? What world am I living in now?
So in
That's yeah.
post Air Force, you would say that music helped you find kind of, or helped you understand what you experienced in Vietnam?
Understand it? No, but get out the kind of screaming feelings about it. Yes, because if you listen to the whole tone and the lyrics to the album, it's kind of like wondering how, why, where, that kind of thing, and putting that into words and lyrics really helps a lot because it was, and it's not unlike today, except that there's no draft. That's the only major difference.
Yet.
But it's like you look around today and you look at these guys who go overseas and in the military, like why? They're defending us against 50 people who wear rags on their heads and live in a cave. I mean, they're going to invade LA tomorrow. And what? Why are we there?
I completely agree with you.
Yeah, I think the media is a great sales tool.
And I think we are the world's police, that is, currently.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
I think we've funded our way into that position, and I think that we have the 5 defense stocks that rise every time we have a rising defense budget, and that's sadly it's considered a great thing, but many of us have different opinions. So yeah, I got this. This is a bottomless pit of mistakes that we can look at that many of us believe that we've made or we could be making going forward. So we'll what is it? Tom Hanks said when he talked about his greatest moments and his poorest moments, he said, this too will pass. And I just love that statement because it makes you go, okay, so this too will pass, and then hopefully we'll see something change in a good way, but who knows?
Well, that's kind of the way you always have to look at it. It's going forward and working for the best and the better. You know,
Yeah.
there's nothing to attack it. You know, you can sit around and mope and cry and scream and whine and all that, but that does nothing except make you terrible. So you just get up and go forward, do the best you can. And sometimes you wind up in good positions, and life is much better.
Because I remember 68 political election, Wallace, Humphreys, and Nixon. I was like, probably, I was 9. I was 8, 8.5, 9 at that time. My brother was a Wallace guy. We won't go there. My father was a Nixon guy, and my mother was a Humphreys person. And it was just interesting because I got to go with them, and they would get me to help them hand out their political stuff. And I go to a school, and I had a mother, father, and a brother. They were all at different tables, and they would tell me to come and do their stuff. And and I was just like, well, who's going to kick my ass the worst? So unfortunately, I was handing out Wallace shit because my brother lived in the same room with me.
Perfect.
I could run away from the parents, but I couldn't run away from the brother.
Oh well.
Yeah, no, but it was so weird to like look at that and say, wow, that is the division. But in our household, they didn't hate each other. They just said, well, that's fine. You like Nixon, but you're wrong, and then move on. And there wasn't this, I need to prove you that it seems like that it's gotten so much more. I wasn't 18, 19 then, 20, so I don't know. I mean, how was it for you when you saw that?
Uh, when I came back, I spent like 2.5 months in Travis Air Force Base in the hospital. Then they cut me loose from the Air Force, and that was it. And when I came through San Francisco, and then down to where I live in Santa Barbara, and I'm looking around at just walking through the town, looking at people and catching bits and pieces of conversation. And of course, San Francisco was a mess because that was like Riot City. And I'm going, man, what the heck is going on? I mean, and it was literally like a different country. And it felt like a different people.
Yeah.
Wow. It was quite the change.
What do you mean by
Mhm.
different people when you say that?
When in 1964, when I graduated high school, you could pretty much talk to anybody about anything, and it was like you were saying, you wouldn't blow up and all that, but you could have a discussion and talk to people about things you might disagree, but it's okay. But generally, people like the United States, they like being Americans, they like the lifestyle, and they would defend it. I mean, and they were all for defending it. But 4 years later, there was so much confusion and darkness, and people were all fired up for different reasons. You didn't know where you had come from. It was incredible. But prior to that, it really was like Disneyland, Leave It to Beaver time. Everybody was about the same.
Hmm.
Yeah, we were in a different economic zone then, so for us it was
My God, yes.
yeah. Early
I
60s was a recession.
I was looking at old
Yeah.
pictures the other day, and it was like pictures of the 50s and 60s from Santa Barbara, and I'm looking, and they were showing some parking lots and things like that. Not one Japanese car in sight. None. You see a parking lot with 500 cars in it, no Japanese cars. They haven't even heard of them yet.
Yeah. Yeah. When did that happen? Was that 70s, I think. I remember Datsuns came in the 70s. And and then I think it was Toyota.
Well, I think that stuff kind of started around early 70s, late
Early
60s.
70s. Yeah, and it really took hold because they were cheaper and they stayed together better. And the unions were peaking in the 70s, and they made well, and they were in a very strong position. And
Sure.
many said they took advantage of it. So that is the downfall. You know, there has to be a
And
meeting of the minds between corporate and union, and it's a hard thing because when one gets stronger than the other, he's like, "Screw you! I'm going to get you for what you did 50 years ago, and I'm going to line my pocket." So sadness, sadness, you know.
that, that was also around the time, late 60s, early 70s, when if you bought an American car, it would be all beautiful and big and wonderful and all that, but you knew it was only going to last about 3 years.
Yeah,
And
I
after
do.
about 3 years, it start falling off and breaking, and you'd have to replace this and that, and that was getting to be a real pain.
The
You find
American
out,
ingenuity.
well, you find out that
Yeah,
the rattle in the rear fender was a beer can that the union guy that was doing the line put in there. That's what you started to find out because it's like, hey, we made a bunch of money and we're pushing back. Now, these are the stories I don't know statistically, and I haven't looked at what the facts were, but that was what was played, and that's what I heard was the unions got too powerful and took advantage of that power. So, but I
you
don't.
can call it. Yeah,
Yeah. Well, I think that we want a fairness where, if you're working a full-time job, you should be able to live indoors, I think. I don't, and have enough food, you know, and maybe you got to
yeah,
work two full-time jobs. I don't, it's just, but what's fair? I mean, if you got a husband and wife working together full-time and they can't afford a place anywhere near they need to work, and they can't afford to pay their bills, and they can't afford to eat, and they can't afford to have health care, there's something wrong with that in society. That's not that. I mean, not to be Mr. Socialist liberal guy, but that just seems wrong to me morally. I don't, and I'm not religious in any way, and hey, I want to make as much money as I can, but I just don't think you got to fuck the little guy that bad to do it. I mean,
it's people started with these long range plans a long time ago that turned out to be to backfire really bad. That they would build all these housing areas, the suburbs. They were like 30, 40, 50 miles away from where people worked.
yeah,
And then they started the commuting generations, and that just changed human lifestyle like crazy. And all of a sudden, mom wasn't staying at home anymore, and the world changed. It would change really, really bad. Hopefully, they may have learned something. We'll see what happens in the future. I think the next 5 years or so, it might change.
I
It
just
might.
I remember that when you talk about the commuting nightmare of the early '80s commuting to Springfield from Woodbridge, people wouldn't know what I'm talking about, but it was about 15 miles, and it took about 45 to 50 minutes for rush hour. But then I had a job that was that distance a little bit further in the mid to late '80s, and that job took me an hour. So it was like, and then an hour and 15, and then that was on a good day, and then a bad day was 2 hours, and you're just like, you know,
Right.
and so 4 hours a day was that. And then when I worked construction, I remember the guys that would take a 2.5 hour trip in and a 2.5 hour trip out because, they couldn't get a job in their neck of the woods for $6 an hour. And $6 an hour is what they would pay their rent. So they had to move far enough away to where the money that they made them be able to live indoors, so
Yeah,
yeah,
it's that stuff's got to work itself out, and I think we've come to the end of that.
yeah, hopefully.
Yeah,
No,
I'm
we
located
can
in
solve the world problems, but Zach, you got to talk over me because I'm the
You're brown, aren't you? Right?
yes.
We're Browns. Is that how we communicate? But
So
yeah, I was just talking about the state of LA and
Yeah.
the pricing of housing where I live versus a mile or two up is
Hmm.
thousands of dollars in difference. It's crazy.
Yeah, you take a
yeah,
difference. But anyway, we were talking about music, we were talking about that. When you talked about you got back, you wrote, it sounds like you uh took your experiences in Vietnam and you put them into songs. Is
pretty
that
much. Yeah, yeah.
and that was the gist, and that was your best album ever. Have you if you did how long after that? Because you became an IT guy, right?
What happened was uh, came out with the album at the end of 1969, and I started just in literally hitting the road, going up and down California and LA and San Francisco and all places in between, just getting anywhere, trying to play anywhere.
Mhm.
And did that for about 2 years. And of course, the album Sank Like a Stone was never heard from till much, much later. And then, so what happened was after that, I moved to Hawaii.
Mhm.
And then I was gigging in Hawaii. Hawaii is a much easier place to gig at, except that after about 2 years, give or take 2.5 years, I got so tired of playing Don Ho songs and wearing, white slacks and white shoes and the Aloha shirt and, playing on all that stuff. And I just couldn't handle it anymore. I just packed up one night and said, I'm sorry, guys, I'm done. And that was it. And I split and joined the Navy.
And when you say Hawaii, was that on the Big Island by chance?
No, it was in Honolulu.
Honolulu. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, main drag there where all the clubs are in Waikiki Boulevard.
So when you were traveling as well for playing, did you go up to San Francisco or did you mainly stay in the Santa Barbara, LA kind of area, or maybe even San Diego, the SoCal area?
I was primarily doing California up and down the coastline,
Okay.
except a couple of times when I go up to Washington State or Oregon, which is really great place to play. Wonderful people up there, and beautiful country, of course. But that's where it was for the most part. But that's a brutal way to live. I got tired of that quick.
Yeah, on the road is uh and going, it's I've done just some trips like that. It's just difficult, very difficult over time. But you said you went into the Navy and then and that's when you started to get your technology. You started to learn about technology and being the computer expert at that point.
Yeah,
That had been 71, right?
yeah, I went through their electronics and avionics school, and
Hmm.
then I was computers and radars and radio and naval aircraft, and did that for 4 year tour, and then got out and went to work for private computer companies, and then worked there for years and years and years on the road, and still on the road, and
Yeah.
around and fixing everyone's computer and so on until I injured my ankle and I was having a hard time getting around. And but you went through this whole little chain of doctors and whatnot. And anyway, that turned into I got a job at this at a film and video place in Hollywood that made movies and TV shows. And I worked there for 10 years, and that was fun.
Yeah.
I was the IT guy there. I took care of all the computers and stuff that made all the films and so on, and all their desks, computers, and everything. That was great.
So that was like mid 70s to mid 80s.
that was like 90. That was the 90s.
Oh, that was the 90s. Okay. Because I was thinking like technology and radar, and I was like, wow, they were that, you were on the cutting edge. But even in the 90s, that was just wow. Because that's when the internet just started to break, was like mid 90, 93, 94. You started to see it expand and just say, wow.
Oh yeah.
Everybody said it was a fad. I think they're right.
Oh yeah.
We'll see. We'll see if I'm right,
Yeah. Well, yeah. You take like an army of people to keep all the computers and electronics going because of the state of the art. In the 80s and 90s, which I was part of that army. But after the 90s, when it got into the 2000s, then the companies that used to do that started withering away because you'd buy, you'd buy a laptop or you'd buy a cell phone, and it essentially would last forever unless you wanted to just change it up to another version. So you didn't need people to fix that stuff anymore for the most part.
Yeah, that's true. And then they started doing the planned obsolescence after that because they realized, my gosh, we only sell it once. It's no good.
Oh yeah. It's like, oops. Yeah, we designed ourselves into a corner.
Yeah, and that's such a strange manufacturing thought process, is that we have to build stuff that's shitty because that way people will buy more of it more often,
Oh yeah.
But the I'm not there yet. I'm just not there. But yeah. So when you were doing this, were you doing any gigs did you play music at all then?
The only time, for the most part, no, but there was this one short time of about 80, the mid 80s, 87, 88. And we got four guys together, all guys who used to be in bands. And we started playing just for the fun of it, jamming over at this guy's house, like, once a week. And then they said, we were saying, hey, we ought to go do open mic nights or something just for fun. And we did a couple of those. And then there's a picture of us floating around on the internet. You can find. It was interesting band because it was like a rockabilly, like a psychedelic rockabilly band.
Really? What was it? What was the name? Do you have a name of the band?
Oh, that was the Melted Foreheads.
The Melded Foreheads.
No, Melted.
Oh, the Melted Foreheads.
It's a great name.
That's
it. I like that. And now there's a picture of you somewhere on the web.
Yeah. If you look up FJ Mcmahon on Google and just go to images, you'll come across it. It's the one where the guy's playing a stand-up bass and one snare drum and two guitars.
Yeah. And so what's it like to be famous?
I'm not famous.
Well, to my kid you are, and to me you're becoming famous, okay?
Yeah,
You're quite famous to us.
Our folk singer from the 60s.
Mm-hmm. To me it's sort of like, wow. And then you went in a different direction. I look at that and I look at your career, and I don't know the guy personally, but there's a guy that was a computer engineer, and he headed a band here in DC area, and he played up and down the East Coast, and is Billy Price and the Keystone Rhythm Band. I don't know if you ever heard of him. I can't even name his songs, but Physical was one. He used to sing, what was it? Let's Get Physical. God, I can't remember her name. But he did a bunch of he was a rockabilly songwriter, singer, and keyboardist, and just an amazingly powerful voice. But, that didn't pay the bills.
No,
and the band was.
It's fun.
Yeah, you do that because he did it because I don't know him and I can't ascribe things to him, but I think he just did it because he loved it.
Sure. Heck yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Find that.
I think a lot of artists have to.
It makes other people happy, and it's like, so you're going to do any gigs? Got any set up?
What can we see in the future? Yeah.
Oh, you mean now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not really, no. Just kind of, I'm retired, just taking it easy. I mean, I work 40 hours a week, but I'm retired, taking it easy. So
What are you doing now?
I work for a company. I am a video monitor officer.
Your security.
Uh, yes,
Oh,
and I
you
work in a
arrest people like me. Oh, shit.
I work in a cubicle with three computer screens, and we monitor cameras from all across the nation, and fill out reports and make sure everything's okay, and that kind of thing.
Interesting. I had a quick question too about Spotify because I noticed that I think the album that you created, the Spirit of the Golden Juice, was put up in 2020. I just had a question. Did you put that up yourself, or how did that process work? Because that's how I found you
Oh,
originally.
to answer your question, I have no idea. It's
Really? Okay.
they put it. Someone put it there. They did. I don't know who.
I wonder. Yeah, now I'm wondering how the licensing works for that. That's
Do you
interesting.
get royalties? Or did you own the
Oh yeah,
album?
yeah. But the problem is streaming royalty. I'm an ASCAP member, and
Hmm.
streaming royalty. That's what David Crosby used to scream about all the time. You'd have like a million listens, and you'd get a check for $1.89.
Because why so
Oh,
low?
because the way they're set up, they just don't pay that much. On the plus side, though, are you guys familiar with and IMDb?
Yes.
Okay. If you check me on IMDb, you can see there's a few TV shows and motion pictures that have a music in it.
Yeah.
And, they pay pretty well.
Oh, so you've done scores for film and television as well.
Oh yeah,
Oh,
I've got friends who do motion picture soundtracks and things like that, and they slip and write things in now and again.
So for which one? Any name that we would know?
There's what's his name? Dream Scenario. A movie just came out, maybe a little less than a year ago,
Uh-huh.
yeah, it was
and they actually.
Nicolas Cage.
Oh, wow. So you
It's
still do, I mean,
what's his name? Oh,
Nicolas Cage, yes, was in that. Yeah. I saw that actually. It was a good movie.
out. He's running out to his car, and he wants to get away. So what do you play over Nicolas Cage banging on his car trying to get away? You play part of Early Blue. Don't go away. Don't go away. Don't go away.
I didn't even realize that.
oh my gosh.
That's that's wild.
So people that listen
So
to it and then they use it later and then, oh, wow, that's wow. Hmm.
so yeah, that's very nice. I'm very appreciative of that.
Yeah.
So did they contact you about that? About using your song?
Yeah, they have to get the licensing.
Okay. Yeah, because I'm doing a short film right now, and I contacted somebody for the score. And those compositions are not cheap. Those are not a cheap
Mm,
thing. No.
no.
I just had a quick question as well about 5 Year Kansas Blues. If you could just talk about the writing process and maybe the meaning behind that song, because that is my personal favorite off the album.
Oh, I'm sorry. You want to know what about 5 Year Kansas Blues?
Oh, just to know more about it, just to know about the writing process and maybe a
Oh,
little insight.
5 Year Kansas Blues essentially was the story. It was started by the husband of Joan Baez,
Hmm.
and what it's all about. It's back in the '60s when there was a draft, and if your number came up where you were drafted, you could either go in the army for 2 years, or you could give them the middle finger and you could go to prison for 5 years. And some people, instead of going running to Canada or whatever, some people stood up and said, "No, I'm not going on principle," like Joan Baez's husband, David, at the time. And he went to prison. And so that's what that song's all about. And that's, if you listen to it, that's exactly what it is, straight through. It's like he's going to prison working criminal style, even though he's not a criminal, he's working criminal style. Because he chose not to go to some other country and kill people.
I remember the only one, the famous person I remember is Muhammad Ali changed his name to Cassius Clay. And then did he go to prison for like 18 months?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, he was in jail for 18 months for that. I'm not going to go kill a bunch of brown people or yellow people or whatever he called them. For me doing, when you're doing this here. And it's sad. It was sad, get your house in order before you go try to burn somebody else's house down.
Totally. That's what it, because they could get away with the for-profit wars without the draft. And, the smart guys knew that. And so that's why they did it.
Well, you look at it now, and I mean, it seems to me that did we not have nearly as many private contractors in Iraq and Afghanistan as we did military? And the contractors are paid 4 to 6x what our military is.
Oh my God. Yeah, you have no idea. When I was in the Navy, I told you I was an electronics technician, and one of the aircraft I worked on was the E-2 Hawkeye, which is a radar plane with a dome on top.
Oh wow, that's so cool!
And those things are just jammed full of electronic stuff you wouldn't believe. And they're one of the units that it used had these strings of light bulbs that would show numbers, but they were like old style. It wasn't like nowadays. It was like the light bulb was real long. It was like 3 or 4 inches long, and you would have numbers from 0 to 9 in wire going back through, and it would show. And those things were being charged at the time. I want to think it was like $2,000 a light bulb.
Wow.
And so when we had some burn out and we had to go, we need 10 light bulbs,
Wow.
Of course, today he doesn't care. He can buy it, but.
And then you drop a box on the floor.
Oops. That would happen. I came to work one day, one morning in the Navy, and and there were a couple of guys out there on the flight line, and they had made up this game like dominoes.
Yeah.
And they were taking these washers, and they throw the washers out over this one black line in the ground, and they were competing to who could get closest to the line but not get on it with these washers.
We used to do that with quarters.
Washers these guys had. These were ultra perfect balanced washers for propellers.
Yeah.
And they cost like $10,000 a box or something because they were so perfectly balanced. These guys are bouncing them off cement.
Oh my gosh.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fine.
Yeah, you think about the money that was spent. I mean, the first company I was involved in, and when we started up, I remember we had to borrow money to buy disk space. This has been 1993. And he said we're going to need 10 gigs because that's how much the documents were that we were going to put online. So we wanted to buy, and they were 2 gig drives, and each one was $20,000. So we put the money together to get it. And I just remember it was 10 gigs, and now you could, that's in your thumbnail. That amount, and it's $5. You're like, whoa. What, just exponentially changing, but you needed it to be technologically competitive at that time. So price was, even though it was as much as it was worth it. And I think that's the same thing that when you start to when you go to the crazy prices that things cost, you kind of look at like what are we going to get out of this, and how's this going to be better, and is this truly going to make it matter, and are they never going to is radar not going to be able to pick us up because we have these type of watchers? I mean, there's just so many things that go into that, and there's the let's just screw the people that are buying it because we need more profit this quarter. So there is that side too. But
Well, then
yeah,
the whole world with that kind of thing, you know,
yeah,
and that's what it is. It's
yeah. So you said you do monitoring now. You're semi-retired, but you still work 40. Well, I don't know what that means. What does that mean?
well, I mean, when I was 62 years old, I retired,
Okay,
and now I'm past the age. I'm 78 now,
you're 78. Okay.
and once you get past, I think 70, I've forgotten what it is, 70 something or other, you can make as much money as you want, and it doesn't increase your taxes.
Ah,
So
and it no longer hits your social security. Yeah, that's the
right.
yeah.
So and plus, I found out that if there's no reason to get your butt up off the couch and go do something, I don't.
Yeah. I'm
I did that during the stupid COVID thing,
mhm.
and I wound up sitting on my butt for like 7 months or something. And I was like, I can't do this. I'm just gonna die. You know, I think this is
Yeah.
crazy. So I just said, forget it. I'm going back to work.
We here at the Brown House decided to just drink liquor.
Yeah, that was how we
I
passed the time.
I just to let you know that was not really a good choice, but and we had a whole lot of motivation. You know, hey, we're COVID, you can't go out that much, so instead of buying one bottle of liquor, we'll just buy a case, and then you won't have to go back to the liquor store for months. And unfortunately, that's not the way it worked.
exactly.
The
Oh,
more you bought, the more you consumed.
by the way, as long as we're quickly on the subject of liquor and
Yeah.
the subject of the album, that's the name of my album.
What?
It's
Spirit of the
whiskey, isn't
Golden is I.W. Harper Bourbon.
Oh my
it? Oh
God.
wow.
Okay. Yeah, I'm a bourbon guy. Always have been. My favorite now is Blanton's. I've done I.W. Harper. I was, I mean, more Knob Creek. I graduated to Makers in the 90s, just, one thing after the other. But why I.W. Harper?
That was just the main juice of the times back in Nam with my
Oh,
buddies. And because we'd get it at the liquor store on base,
yeah.
fifth of it costs like $2.07.
Oh, it's cheap too. Okay. Or
Exactly.
was that cheap?
Yeah, well, it's very cheap. So
Okay.
but
I was thinking in '69. I don't know what the price of bourbon was because I was I was stealing at that age, not, but I wasn't being old enough to buy it. I was like 11, so you can steal a taste and go like, "Oh my God!" and then you brag about it for 6 weeks, you know, But wow,
Up anymore, it's a little strong for me. But back then, yes.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's the thing when you get old is to the whole idea. I'm 65. I did the retirement thing. Probably this is my second time. I think I retired once when I was 45, retired again here at 63, 62, 63. End of 2021. Left the last job. I quit. I didn't get fired, and I was on good terms, and I was nice to them, and everything. It's just like, when you're doing something that doesn't seem like it's adding to your life, and you start to realize that you have a whole lot less of your life left, you start to say, well, I better go do something that makes me happy or that makes me feel like I'm accomplishing something. But the thing is here I am 3 years later, and I'm still trying to figure out what the hell that is.
Which is
That's
fine.
it. Yeah.
There's you can do that.
I think as long as you search, because that's it. I gotta keep searching. If I stop looking, then it's like, well, what the hell are we doing here? You know?
Then you're just walking
Yeah.
around in circles.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Zach's still searching too. He's not sure, right?
Always, always
Well,
still
you're in your
searching.
20s, man. You got
That's what it's
you
all
got
about.
the world is your oyster. Wow.
The world's salty, is that what you're saying?
It's your oyster. I guess you could call it that, something like that. I'm not quite sure, but we'll see.
you're saying the
Wow.
funny. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So on a record of my father, we have a strong family kind of genre as well that we like to talk about. If you have any parental advice or would like to talk about what it is to be a parent, that'd be fantastic to hear from you about.
About my parents or what?
About your because you're a father, correct?
Okay, my parents met during World War II in the Navy,
Hmm.
and they divorced when I was like 1 year old. So I essentially grew up with a one parent situation, and that was my mom. And she was a working mom, raised a kid. My dad went off and got married again, and they had another kid.
Oh, wow. So your mom was a single mother in the 60s.
Yes,
Wow.
Sounds like
That's a
somebody I
strong
know.
lady. That's
it's
that's
tough for women to be single working moms. Real tough on them.
I grew up with a very strong mother. Father didn't work during the 60s. And I knew the backlash. And I was younger then, but my God, the backlash that you feel when your mother's the provider and all that is like uh school must have been fun for you.
It didn't occur to me until later on that sometimes I'd go in and I'd see the school counselor,
Yeah.
and he kind of looked nose at me like I was a third rate being, and it didn't occur to me that to him I was, because I was a child of a divorced family, and a divorced family back then was like L no, oh it's
Yeah.
like
Oh yeah.
totally wrong.
Yeah.
So probably part of my bad attitude, which probably came out in some good lyrics later on.
And some great lyrics, I have to say. What have you been reading or listening to lately? What have you been consuming media wise?
Listening to you mentioned Spotify, and Spotify is kind of a neat deal. You just pay like $10 a month or something like that, and you can listen to anything and everything 24 hours a day. And that's kind of what I do, because at work I listen to Spotify for 8 hours while I'm doing my video thing, and
Oh,
I
wow.
listen to everything from rockabilly to classical, depending, and everything in between. Just because there's so much music out there, and you're usually in a place where it's kind of difficult to appreciate it because you're busy, you're preoccupied, and so on and so on. And I got it like last week, for instance. Last week I'm sitting there doing my thing, and I accidentally fell on this category of like French 50s popular music. It's like French nightclub music, and this music comes on. It's all the lyrics are in French, and I do not speak French. But the music would come on, and you are immediately sitting in front of a checkered tablecloth with a candle, a glass of wine, in a French cafe, which is a pretty cool place to be if you're working.
Yeah.
And it was great. I listened to that all day long and just loved it. Didn't understand a word.
The
There's
perfect
something,
work music.
yeah, oh yeah, transporting you away from the job is always great. Have you been
Yeah.
reading? Have you been reading at all by chance? Are you a big reader?
I am not a big reader. I used to be long ago. I kind of don't have the patience for it now. Uh, what I used, the type of thing that I really used to love to read was like Animal Farm, 1984, that kind of thing. I just gobbled those things up like crazy.
Yeah, George Orwell is a fantastic
Yeah.
author.
Oh yes,
Absolutely fantastic.
oh
Steinbeck
yes.
too.
Aren't bad things to be.
Well, they brought I guess you would say the country's view towards things that were happening, you know, or could happen.
Yeah,
And you look at a lot of these and you're just like, whoa.
absolutely,
Mhm.
absolutely. And
Yeah,
then, and you know, that kind of thing in real life is very sneaky. It just sneaks up on you, and you're not aware of it until all of a sudden you are.
Yeah, yeah.
then you question what world you're really living in. It's getting closer and
You,
closer every day to those books.
Well, yeah, when you hear the people that, as you say, came back from Iraq and they wonder, why did we do that? You know, and why do we teach this, or why do we do things in this particular way, or why were we never taught this in history class, or you know, and the way this is, you know, it's funny. I
sure,
look back to, yeah,
sure. There's often a plan at work that we're not always aware of.
I completely agree. I think that as we're coming to the end here, if you have any advice for our listeners or for us in general, any sort of things that you go about your daily life thinking about, would love to hear them.
Yeah, yeah. You got to keep your eyes and ears open and pay attention all the time. Make the absolute most of life because even though sometimes it might get a little boring or strange or even hard, it's a gift. It's a it is a gift. And so just look around and make the absolute best you can of it all the time.
I love that. That's fantastic. Well, thank you for joining us, Mr. McMahon. It was a pleasure talking to you. It's a pleasure talking to the guy I've been
Oh,
listening to for about, I think, 7 years now. So I think
wow,
that that's a great time. I'm glad
great.
I emailed you.
yeah,
I'm really happy about that.
Oh, great. Thank
you,
you. I appreciate it. Thank
it's
you.
a pleasure to meet you. It's wonderful to meet my kid's idol. It kind of sucks that it's not me, but I'm glad it's you, and it's a pleasure to meet you.
All right. I appreciate it.
All right. We'll talk to you later, Mr. McMahon. You have a great day.
Hey, let's have a good weekend.